Bustin' with the Boys is here to let you know that every college football Saturday, FanDuel is dropping profit boosts that can turn wins into bigger wins.
Sounds like we should rename Saturday Booster Day.
Nice.
21 plus and present in select states. Opt-in required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including any token expiration and max wager amount. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
What's going on, Eagles fans? This is Cayden Steele for NJ.com. Welcome to another episode of the No Huddle Show, our Philadelphia Eagles podcast. And joining me last night for a late night episode was Bob Brookover, my co-host. And last night, we really got to sift through the roster, position by position. The Eagles got down to 53 on Tuesday afternoon, so we went from quarterbacks all the way to special teams, and we talked about the strengths, the weaknesses of this roster. Now that we have a better picture of what things look like, we went over some of the surprising roster cuts at those positions, some of the guys that made the roster that we were not expecting to, and we just generally talked about, just our thoughts about the hecticness that took place over the last few days and to what to expect today. It's Wednesday, and the Eagles could possibly claim some players on waivers. They could possibly make some trades. We went into all of that. But first, this episode is brought to you by Penco Tech. With 2 convenient campuses in Blackwood, New Jersey and in Bristol, Pennsylvania, Penco Tech has provided comprehensive hands-on career training for more than 50 years, featuring programs in HVAC, electrical, plumbing, automotive technology, and more. With dedicated instructors and career placement assistants, Penco Tech can give you the skills and confidence to build a brighter future. Financial aid is available to those who qualify. Learn more and take the first step by going to pencotech.edu. Bob, before we get into everything today, all the roster cuts that happened, how was vacation?
Vacation was good. Anytime I'm not working, it's a good day. So it was good. It went by too fast. Now we're into season. Vacation over, season on.
Yes. And we were back at the office today. An important day for the Eagles. A hard day as Howie Roseman opened up his little monologue today, because it is a difficult day. A lot of players got cut, and the Eagles trimmed their roster down to 53. There were some interesting decisions, and for the first time all summer, like we've talked about what we think about the roster, but now we can kind of see the full picture. Howie might not be done, but now we have a better idea of where the strengths lie on this roster, where the weaknesses lie as well. Let's start out with the most important position of all of football. Let's go quarterback. They made a trade this past Sunday, and they acquired Sam Howell from the Minnesota Vikings. I actually gave up a 5th-round pick to do it. They released 6th-round rookie Kyle McCord, the quarterback from Syracuse that they drafted this past spring. Now the quarterback room, obviously we know Jalen Hurts, but Tanner McKee's dealing with a fracture. It's been finally reported as a fractured thumb, and now we got Sam Howell in this room. What do we think of this whole quarterback situation, mainly with the Tanner McKee injury, the addition of Sam Howell, and the outs of Kyle McCord?
Yeah, I mean, it obviously went from a very inexperienced room to a more experienced room, because Sam Howell was a starter for an entire season a couple years ago. He had his 2 best games probably of his life were against the Eagles. 5 of his 22 career touchdowns are against the Eagles. The Eagles obviously liked him. Howie Roseman's maybe his most telling quote of the day was, "We would have traded for Sam Howell, even if Tanner McKee wasn't hurt, wasn't dealing with a thumb injury right now." I found that very telling. It meant the end, at least for right now, of Kyle McCord, local Mount Laurel, St. Joe's Prep. Kyle McCord's time in Philadelphia. We'll see if he gets through or if he's claimed by another team. The interesting team to claim him to me would be the local Jets. He grew up a Jets fan. But the room is definitely got more experience. Before that, the only two guys with experience were Tanner McKee and Dorian Thompson Robinson through training camp, and he and Tanner started one game, played very well in a small sample size. Dorian Thompson Robinson had not played well at all, and I think he had started two games, whatever it was. It wasn't good. Yeah,
No.
I think one touchdown, 10 interceptions, and he didn't do anything, and Kyle McCord also didn't do anything to say, "Hey, yeah, we can handle this role if Tanner McKee's not ready. We can be the backup quarterback." Um, so so they pulled the trigger on Sam Howell, and now it'll be interesting to see if there's any competition here between Tanner and Sam Howell in terms of if one of them has to go in. So that part creates a little interesting. We have a competition that we didn't get to see in training camp, but what the competition there is going forward will be interesting to see.
Yeah, I don't think it's a crazy idea to bring up because Sam Howell has a lot of experience, and Tanner McKee doesn't. Even though we believe in Tanner McKee's potential, he hasn't played as much as Sam Howell. But at that same time, I, I don't think Sam Howell is very good. I get the passing numbers. He threw for a bunch of yards in some games, but like when he was a starter in 2023, he had the same amount of interceptions that he had touchdowns, 21 and 21. He's an erratic quarterback, and I do think there is some talent there, and like he has a big arm. There are some flash moments, but there's a difference between like just being talented and having some gifts and actually being a good quarterback. And I don't think Sam Howell is. Seattle traded him. The Minnesota traded him. Um, and then he lost a. They obviously didn't feel comfortable enough with him being the backup. I don't think this is a bad swing for your quarterback three. I mean, Sam Howell is better. He's probably the best quarterback three in the NFL. I mean, I would have to go through the rosters, but I feel confident saying he's probably best QB three in the entire league. But it is fascinating because I don't think he is a reliable trustworthy quarterback when he does play because of the turnovers. But he is better than Kyle McCord. He would give you a better chance to win. So if he had to play week one and Jalen Hurts got hurt, I think the Eagles would feel a lot better about that. And then, Bobby made a good point that Howie Roseman said he evaluated him in 2022. They watched a lot of him. He was in person to watch him when they played against Pittsburgh when Kenny Pickett was there. They also got Kenny Pickett the year before, which Howie joked about. That game that he watched in person has had a big influence on that position. But um, I'm a little low uh, on Sam Howell, but as your QB3, I think it's not a terrible swing at all. But to me, this is Tanner McKee's job when he comes back.
Yeah, well, we'll see. He's got to come back.
Yeah,
He's got to come back healthy first. I mean,
yeah,
I'm impressed by what Tanner McKee has shown when he's been on the field, but I'm still leery of the sample size. So we'll see.
yeah. And I think that's fair. And I would say it's probably a smart thing to do to like pump the brakes on Tanner McKee a little bit. The upside to me is he could be a really good backup. I'm not sure if I'm willing to go starter yet, but I mean the hype around him is pretty insane. I mean, you look at like if I'm remembering this right, I'm pretty sure like Albert Breer said something about maybe not Albert Breer. So I don't want to cite the person, but one of the big national guys was saying that like Tanner McKee is going to draw interest from teams soon. Like it seems like he's going to be a hot commodity, and he has barely played, so that is fascinating. But let's move on to the running backs now. Right, not too much of an intrigue here, in my opinion, but they did keep AJ Dillon on the 53, and that was a popular bold prediction with some people covering the team and just generally maybe they would leave AJ Dillon off the roster and bring him back later on, but they decided to keep AJ Dillon. Will Shipley looks like the backup behind Saquon Barkley. And then I'm going to throw Ben Van Sumeren in this discussion. The fullback, linebacker turned fullback has made the 53-man roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all saw that coming. I mean, they had him running there all summer long, and in the spring after him being a linebacker the year before, um, and he's one of their special teams staples. So you kind of saw that he was going to make the team. I never really had any doubt in camp, even in OTAs, that AJ Dillon was going to make this team. He's got a terrific resume. I think they've actually upgraded the running back position from last year. Kenny Gainwell was a good player, but I think AJ Dillon has a chance to be. Let's put it this way, I'd be interested to see. I am interested to see how if something were to happen to Saquon Barkley, it's trouble. It would be horrible news for this team. But would they rely more on AJ Dillon or Will Shipley? I don't know the answer to that question. It may be Dillon. Dillon has certainly a more impressive past body of work, and I thought he looked good in training camp. Yeah, but I think this room is better actually than it was a year ago, because I think AJ Dillon has more of an upside, and Will Shipley showed promise in camp too. It's still like Tanner McKee, very small body of work for him. But I do think this room's actually better than last year.
Yeah, in part because Will Shipley is a better player as well, and if you consider AJ Dillon your RB3, I mean that's a significant upgrade over probably what Will Shipley was as RB3 last year. So overall, I agree with you. This running back room is better because they had the experience of AJ Dillon there, and then you have an improved version of Will Shipley. Will Shipley, I could see him getting some run as a pass catcher on a little bit in this offense. I don't know how much, but I mean, quietly he had a really good training camp in that area, and if he earned a role, on third down sometimes as a receiver, it wouldn't completely shock me. And if it helps Saquon Barkley get a little bit of rest, it's not the worst idea in the world. Um, let's let's transition though to a more interesting position. We've covered running backs, we've covered quarterbacks, um, wide receivers. They go with five, and the big decision here is they decide to release second-year wide receiver Anaya Smith, who they selected in the fifth round last year out of Texas A&M, and there were some expectations for him last season, or at least last offseason, that a guy that had the ability to potentially be a dynamic punt returner, a kickoff returner, a gadget player on offense. It never really worked out, and the Eagles have moved on from him with the intention, reportedly of bringing him back on the practice squad. But they go with five. A recent acquisition, John Mechie, makes the roster. He'll probably be wide receiver 4, maybe. That's I'm only saying maybe because maybe it's going to be Darius Cooper as a wide receiver 4 potential. But he also made the roster behind the top 3 guys and got a lot of credit today from the Eagles. I can't remember if Nick or Howie said. I can't recall. I think it was Nick, but talking about a lot of the dirty work stuff that Darius Cooper does. Yeah, in the quickness and the toughness, but really just that dirty work and this toughness that goes underrated. So he could be a wide receiver 4 as well. This is an interesting room. There's 5 guys here. Are they done? I'm not sure, Bob, but it is a fascinating situation, and it's fascinating that they let go of Anaya Smith.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by the Anaya Smith move, just because you typically don't give up on one of your draft picks, and especially in the first 5 rounds after just 2 years. Again, if they can get him back on the roster, that doesn't necessarily mean they have given up on him, but they didn't feel like he was worthy of a 53-man spot. One of the things to remember always that Howie says every year at this time, our roster is 1 to 70, not 1 to 53. So the guys they bring back on that practice squad, do matter, and many of them will get a chance. I pointed out in the story today, the Eagles used 68 players last year, so guys were going back and forth the practice squad. That's not just lip service. That is a real thing. Another real thing, though, is, it's much a big deal here. They made a trade for John Mechie, and it's terrific that I'm going to write about Darius Cooper and previous undrafted free agents in franchise history for the morning. but it's the truth of the matter is when you're a wide receiver in a room with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, as long as those two are healthy, you're not going to see the ball. And I think that's even more true this year for Mechie and Cooper, because I think Jahan Dotson could play a more substantial role. I thought he had a really good training camp after having a good end of season, specifically postseason last year. So I think we could definitely see more of him having an impact. But there were 6 receivers who saw playing time last year behind Brown and Smith last year, and they caught a combined 45 balls for 365 yards and 3 touchdowns. So you don't get a lot of work. And when Nick was making those comments about Darius Cooper doing the dirty work, he was also referencing Johnny Wilson, who got hurt, unfortunately for him, and is out for the year. But being that kind of guy, and Darius Cooper is going to have to be that kind of guy if he's going to want to dress every Sunday. He's going to have to be a guy who's doing things on special teams and making plays, and when he does get on the field, maybe making a block that springs something for Saquon, those kinds of things.
Yeah, and that's definitely going to be his immediate role, but there is that long-term development aspect, and it's probably a big reason why he made the roster. I think they probably talked themselves into the fact that he can do those other things, but I do think they are pretty excited about what they've seen this summer, and I don't think it's been a fluke. He's continually gotten better. He's made some spectacular plays at practice as a wide receiver. Nick also mentioned, in addition to his toughness, which is kind of could be his role this year, it has to be his role this year, is his ability to win one-on-one. I mean, he has upside as a pass catcher, and if you think forward in the future, Jahan Dotson's going to be a free agent after the year. John Mechie is scheduled to be a free agent after the year. There's a realistic chance if his development curve continues to go up and he does these other things well in addition, that Darius Cooper could be wide receiver 3 next year, or at least competing for that role next training camp. And he's been arguably the best story of the entire summer. If you go back in late July, he was an afterthought for me, at least. And he every day, though, at least, and I feel like it was really just like early August, right before that really good preseason game against the Bengals, where Darius Cooper, it just felt like every day he was making 1 or 2 plays that just flashed. And it was just a little bit like, who's this 41? And he just kept making plays. And I noticed he was pretty good after the catch as well. He deserved a roster spot, and he probably does have, a bright future if he continues to go down this path. Bob, you mentioned the practice squad wide receivers. I mean, they have a lot of different options too to bring back. I mean, they could bring back Anais, and he could be your, call up on game days if you want a gadget guy, or you want someone else returning punts, or maybe it's Elijah Cooks or Terrace Marshall to give them a little bit of a different body type, that big body type, as a backup that they're kind of missing without Johnny Wilson now. Even though Darius Cooper can do some of that stuff, he doesn't have the height that Johnny Wilson does. So that could be, the guys that end up going back on the practice squad. I feel pretty decent about this wide receiver core, and I'm excited to see John Mechie as well. Let's go
with Cooper too. Yeah. He's got a uniform. He's got a chance. I was looking through just for the story I'm writing tomorrow, and you look at a Corey Clement, and he was kind of buried on that depth chart after he made the team as an undrafted rookie. It ended up scoring 6 touchdowns as a rookie, and then adding another one in the Super Bowl. So, whenever these guys get a chance, it's a cool story, and certainly he's got a chance to write that cool story.
Yeah, and we want to talk about undrafted free agent. I feel like there's levels to this. Obviously, there's those UDFAs that hang on the bottom of the roster, or the event going from bottom of the roster to practice squad, kind of back and forth, just hanging on for dear life to survive in the NFL, or just being fringe NFL players. And then there's those Reed Blankenships that carve out a long career. I feel like Darius Cooper probably trends more towards the Reed Blankenship. I do think they found something here. in Darius Cooper. Is it an immediate impact? I don't know. Probably not this year, but when you mentioned Corey Clement. Look at the end of the year of 2022 of Reed Blankenship. C.J. Gardner Johnson goes down. His snaps increase. He's playing a big role in the NFC Championship game that year against the Niners. Like I I think the Eagles did a great job finding Darius Cooper, and it's going to be one of those decisions in a couple of years. I think a lot of people give credit to Howie for a lot of different things, and Darius Cooper might be next on that list. Let's go to tight ends. The only really debate here for me, and I debated a multiple 53-man projections, and I thought about it through the course of the summer. Would they keep two? Would they keep three? They kept two going into last year, and if they kept three, who would be the third? Would it be Kylen Granson or EJ Jenkins? Well, they got Kylen Granson now behind Grant Calcaterra and Dallas Goedert. And Grant's had a decent summer, but I'm curious on your thoughts on just was three the right move, and what do you think of Kylen Granson?
Yeah, you could. To me, I could kind of see that he was the guy going to make the team. When an underrated part of watching training camp is watching who's lining up on special teams in practice, because that's telling you who this team thinks they're going to keep. So like when you watch the guys lining up, if you watch where like Ben Van Zumeren and Will Shipley were lining up, and who was lining up with those guys, that was kind of an indication of they had a chance of making a team. Granson did not have a great year last year, but he started 17 games in his career. He had pretty good years, the kind of year you'd love to have out of the third tight end in 2022 and 2023. He had combined 61 catches for nearly 700 yards over those two seasons. So he's got some pedigree. I remember talking to Shane Steichen at the owners' meetings about him, and he really liked him a lot. So he's the new guy in the room. He's going to be a special teams staple. To me, when I think of the tight end room, though, is the Eagles were, I think, the last 2 years eighth in yards and seventh in scoring, or vice versa. I forget how it went. But if the Eagles are going to become a top 5 offense, when I think of this tight end room, I think of just if Dallas Goedert can stay healthy for the first time and get 15, 16, 17 games in, that's the thing that could vault the Eagles into being a top 5 offense. And that was the thing I thought about when I look at the tight end room this year.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll throw out there, and this is just my feel for things or I guess for things, the Eagles do make some roster moves over this week. I feel like tight end 3 could be expendable if they were going to cut from a position. Maybe tight end 3 would be that spot. So I don't know if Kylen Granson's spot is necessarily safe throughout the year. I feel like he's one of those guys that's on the fringe, but he had a good summer. I mean, and he played really well, especially the last couple of weeks. I think in OTAs and early training camp, he had some drops that were pretty bad, but he corrected them. And he showed some upside as a pass catcher. Bob, you mentioned the special teams. They obviously trust him there. He's got experience. And when it comes to a roster that you wrote about that's not as deep, I mean, you got to pick the best players available. And if we're looking at the Bobo guys at the end of the roster, Granson was the one that was a little more convincing than some of the other guys at different positions. So I don't mind keeping 3 tight ends. I don't know how safe he is long-term, but I think he did just enough to make his way on the roster. He was better than EJ Jenkins, who really had a rough end of training camp with drops. I mean, just couldn't take advantage of his opportunities. The Eagles have liked EJ Jenkins the last few years, but he just hasn't done enough to take hold of that position as tight end 3. Let's transition now, though, over to the offensive line. They won a lot more than I expected. We do this competition every year as beat writers on 53-man roster projections, and I'm definitely going to lose because I went 9 offensive linemen because I didn't think they were very good this summer, and I just didn't think there was 11 worth keeping. Probably wrong from my perspective. This is a team that values offensive line, and I should have known that they were going to go heavy. But I went 9 because I just don't think the backups are very good, and I didn't think there was 11 guys worth keeping, but they did. And they kept Cameron Williams. They kept Trevor Cayden. The two guys that I think a lot of people weren't sure were going to make the roster. Honestly, I think a lot of people left them off the roster. And then they kept Brett Toth as well. They made the trade on Sunday. They reacquired swing tackle Fred Johnson. And then they got Matt Pryor, who's probably going to be your guard, mainly as your backup interior guard now. Then he can also be your backup option to Fred Johnson if Fred Johnson were to get hurt. And then you also have center Drew Kendall, who can also play guard. So that's really your backups is Kendall, Pryor, and Johnson as like your main trustworthy backups. And then your developmental guys still, Trevor Cayden and Cameron Williams. And the Eagles also put Miles Hinton, the rookie offensive tackle out of Michigan, on injured reserve. And maybe he would have made the roster as well. But they got 11 guys. Feel good about the top five. But what do we think of this interior situation, or this not interior situation, but this backup situation and how it all came about?
Well, you just talked about Kylan Granson being on the fringe of the roster. There are a few guys here that are on the fringe of the roster. I think Matt Pryor and Trevor Cayden should probably not feel all that comfortable about their jobs. And Cameron Williams is here as a developmental piece. He's clearly wasn't ready to be in the NFL, but he's a rookie that they drafted, so he made the roster. Yeah, I mean, and I didn't really even get into it too much this morning with the offensive line, but when I thought about it later, I was like, yeah, they brought back Fred Johnson, so that means they have the guy who was their backup tackle on both sides last year back on the roster. So that part is helpful. But a year ago, the backup guard was Tyler Steen, and now he's a starter. So you've lost some depth there. It looks like if Landon Dickerson can't play on opening day, he's on the opening day roster. But they're obviously holding out hope that he's going to be able to play at least that game, and at the very least miss very minimal amount of time. And Brett Toth's the guy at this point. I don't think he's as good a player as Tyler Steen, but he's obviously knows his assignments. He's a guy who Jeff Stoutland likes, and because he does know what he's doing when he's out there, he hasn't proven that he could be the backup center because of his inability to consistently have good snaps, in my opinion. But they like him enough that they entrust that first guy up as the backup guard right now. The kid I like the most here is Drew Kendall. I thought he had a very good camp, and they played him some at guard, and he looks like he could definitely be a center, which would prevent them if something were to happen to Cam Jurgens from having to go back to Landon Dickerson at center. They did that last year in the NFC Championship, but I don't think it's really what they want to do, even though Landon Dickerson's a terrific center as well as a great guard. But he's among the guys that they've added to this year's roster. That's the one I like the most.
Great shout out. And because I agree with you on Drew Kendall, he's been impressive this summer, not only at center, but the limited action at guard's been pretty impressive for a guy that hasn't played guard since high school. There is some serious upside, and not just backup upside. This is a guy that his father played in the NFL, is a pretty successful player. You could tell from an IQ standpoint that he's ahead of the curve of most rookies. Jeff Stoutland raved about him earlier in training camp when he talked about him. And if you think about his ability to play guard, Cam Jurgens is obviously the long-term center with the Eagles. They extended him this offseason. I mean, he's not going anywhere. But they have money invested into Cam Jurgens. They have money invested into Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata. Lane Johnson could eventually retire soon, but they have money invested in Lane Johnson. I mean, that's 4 offensive linemen they have the majority of their money invested in. And I know this is a little forward thinking, and this has nothing to do with how good Tyler Steen's been this summer, because I think Tyler Steen's been really good. But if you said 2 years from now, Tyler Steen's had a pretty solid 2 seasons as a starter, but the Eagles can't afford him in free agency, and they let him walk, and Drew Kendall took over as the guard. I might be getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I don't think that's a crazy possibility. Drew Kendall has not struggled significantly in training camp, but it's been more good than bad. And the center guard flexibility will help the Eagles this season. He might be their best interior offensive lineman backup, by the end of the year. I mean, I know Matt Pryor's there now, but I could see him growing into that and then being an eventual starter. So, Bob, I love that shout out, because we're talking about the day 3 picks. The guys right now, I feel best about. Drew Kendall's one of them, and one of them's on defense, and we'll get to him later. But and it's a good way to get into it. So let's get into the defense now, where I do think there is more concerns, and you wrote about the depth, and this is where I think the depth problems come. Starting with edge rusher, they keep 5. The top 2, we know Jalen Hunt, Nolan Smith as their starters. You feel good about it. I mean, the upside might be there, but the depth is a little concerning. Josh Uche, Azeez Ojulari, and Agbo Okoronkwo. A little bit of a surprise. That's probably one of the bigger surprises, to make the roster. He made it over Patrick Johnson, who Howie Roseman seems like he wants to get back in the building for sure, though.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little bit surprised, but it seems like they wanted to go with the veteran guy who has some resume and has done it, and he does have some pass rushing chops. Yeah, I mean, there's questions here. Were there questions last year at edge rusher? Yes, but fewer. I mean, Nolan Smith is great end of the last season, did a great job after Brandon Graham went down. But now he's your number 1 edge rusher. Jalen Hunt did a great job after Brandon Graham went down. Now he's your number 2 edge rusher. 2 years ago, this team had 70 something sacks, set a team record with 70 something sacks, and that had Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat, and then Brandon Graham behind them. This is not that team anymore. You've taken flyers on Azeez Ojulari and Josh Uche in the hopes that they're veteran guys. And in Ojulari's case, can he stay healthy, because he can pick up some sacks if he's healthy. And Uche's, can he rebound to the form he once had? So it's impossible to sit here and say this room is as strong as it was last year, let alone 2 years ago, when the team had, not 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 22, when they had a ton of sacks.
It's hard to just generally feel confident, I think, in this unit from at least a 4-man rotation. If they get into December, I'm not sure what this group will be. And this is the area where if they make a trade before week 1, or if they make a trade, at some point before the deadline, they get a big name, or a big name to a degree. Like, obviously they're not going to get, an all-pro edge rusher, but they get someone who's a starting caliber, or like a very high-end rotational rusher. It's or a high-end rotational player. I think it's going to be at this position. Josh Uche, I think, had a decent camp, but it wasn't like he was tearing things up every day. He is quick, and I think that's how he wins, but he hasn't been a really good run defender throughout his career, and he hasn't been productive the last 2 seasons, and he's gone through a lot of change, getting traded to Kansas City. But you're betting on a lot happening here with Josh Uche. I feel more confident, though, after saying that. Still, I feel more confident in Josh Uche than I do Azeez Ojulari, and that's because he had a better summer. And you can go back to Azeez Ojulari's career, and he's been better than Josh Uche consistently, and he has been productive. Bob, you pointed that out. It's a guy that, if he wasn't banged up, could have been a double-digit sack guy by now. And he came on a little bit at the end of training camp. But overall, just the entire picture of training camp, he was relatively quiet, didn't make much of an impact, and he flashed here and there at the end, but that's not enough for me to feel real confident in him going forward. And the injury history does concern me. Like, does it catch up to him? I just don't feel great about either guy. And I could be wrong, and it could turn out like there is a world where the best possible outcome happens because they are both talented players. They both have had some success in the NFL. And look, maybe it comes together and they both just, break out at different points this season and give the Eagles enough. I'm doubting that, though. I am really doubting that. And then the Eagles did cut Antoine Powell-Ryland, who made a last-second push to make the roster after basically doing nothing the entire training camp. He played well against the Jets, and that was that last-second push. But it wasn't enough to make the roster. But I am concerned about this edge rush group. Howie said they're not done. Do you think they're done here?
I don't know. I mean, when Howie's version of not done, I'm not sure if that means they're going to go out and get one of the guys that are still out there. Zadarius Smith comes to mind. He didn't sign last week while I was on vacation, did he?
No, he did not. He is still waiting.
Because I wasn't really paying attention last week when I was on vacation. But somebody like that, I don't know if it means that or it means that he's looking at bottom of the roster guys who were released who they like more than the team maybe that let them go, or they see something that the team didn't let it go. There's always that kind of stuff going on. I can think back to my first stint covering the Eagles from 2003 through 2010, and Howie wasn't the GM. He was an assistant GM. But him being really excited after the Eagles, I think they made a trade for Juque. He was Juque Thomas at the time. I think he later became Juque Parker, became known as Juque Parker. But he was so excited about it, and with good reason. He ended up being a pretty good player for the Eagles, but he wasn't like a guy most people would get excited about. Most people, including myself, didn't even know who he was. But he ended up being a pretty good player for a number of years for that team. How he gets excited about those kinds of things, I don't know where they're at, but it's definitely question mark heading into the season.
Yeah, and if someone's an odd man out in this room, maybe it's Ogbo. I mean, I don't know what value he really brings on special teams. You're probably keeping him around because he's had some pass rush production, and they probably felt better with his ability just as a pass rusher. If he were a part of their rotation, then they felt about Patrick Johnson being able to do that. But I wonder if he's a player that gets replaced with someone else, or do they go 6? Do they try to get deeper in edge rusher and just add one more? Because 5 is fine, but they could go 6 if they really found someone else. I think they got to make a move. If I had to pick just one area on this team I'm most concerned about, it's there. The reason they were so good at the end of last year on defense, and not only was it was the secondary, the coverage was really good, but the pass rush was just so disruptive. Josh Sweat was really good in the playoffs, obviously great in the Super Bowl. Nolan Smith came on, J.X. Hunt, Brandon Graham. I mean, Brandon Graham came back for the Super Bowl, but just in the course of the season, I mean, they had 4 or 5 guys. I know Bryce Huff didn't pan out, but I don't feel great about this unit right now. I felt better about it going into last year, even with some of the question marks. So let's see what they do. They kept 6 defensive tackles on the roster. They kept Byron Young and Gabe Hall, and maybe that had something to do with the fact that they want more interior rush. Maybe they feel like they can make up for a little bit with a really good interior group, and they do have one. Not only did Gabe Hall and Byron Young make the roster, Ty Robinson's on the roster, the 4th-round pick, and that's behind your main 3 contributors, Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Mora Joma. And you make an argument those 3 together, it could be the best defensive tackle room in football.
Yeah, it's definitely a position of depth. To me, one of the big things in this position room is going to be Jordan Davis. He slimmed down, and they were really happy with the way he finished last season, and he did finish very strong. They feel like with him slimmed down for a full season, and he feels this way, which is, I think, as important as anything, that he can be a real impact player. Ty Robinson flashed, I thought, quite a bit during camp. They obviously fell in love with Gabe Hall and Byron Young. I was a little bit surprised that they kept both of them. Um, I thought they would keep one, and probably Gabe Hall was the guy I thought more than Young, but they've kept both of them. It's a really deep room from 1 to 6, and to me, the pressure up the middle, it doesn't always result in the big sack numbers, and it hasn't for Jalen Carter yet. Good sack numbers, but not great ones that you see uh, some interior guys get. But just the constant pressure you get, and that they had last year from Carter and Ojomo and Milton Williams, and then toward the end of the season from Jordan Davis. That constant up the middle pressure, even if it doesn't result in sacks for those guys, it results in sacks for the edge guys. It results in sacks for the linebackers. So it's really important. And this, as you pointed out, this is a really good room.
Yeah, and it's so good that I think the fact that Jacob Sykes and Joe Evans both had pretty solid training camps too, and they had no chance of making this roster. And those could be guys that they bring back on the practice squad. And then the development of Gabe Hall, how he talked about him today, that he has all the tools in his body. Right now, he's better than Ty Robinson. He could have a little bit of a role in this team this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he's getting more snaps than Ty Robinson at some point. And Ty Robinson has the chance to be a good player. I just don't know if he's ready right now. Byron Young had a really strong finish at training camp, and he could be like your backup nose. I wouldn't be surprised if he got some snaps at some point as well. Like, they're really strong here. Like, I feel good about DT. I don't feel good about edge. The guys behind the D line, I feel really good about. This linebacker room is incredibly strong. Probably the strongest it's been in recent memory. I mean, Bob, I don't know if you can remember a linebacker room that's been this good in Philadelphia or how long it's been, but I mean, Zach Bond, Jahad Campbell, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. as the backup, who had a really strong summer. Smile Mundy Jr. as a backup, he had a really strong summer, and that's not even including Nakobe Dean, who could be back at some point this season, playing some type of role, getting back in the mix. Like, when they have five, even when they don't have five, and they only have four on the active roster right now because of Dean being on PUP, this room is really strong. When we talk about strengths on this team, you can make an argument it's defensive tackle and linebacker.
Yeah, I mean, going into last season, this position was a huge question mark, and now it's just an incredible strength. The proof will be in the pudding. What they do on the field. Zach Bond will have to try to, after dealing with some injury in camp, will try to be hard for him to equal what he did last year, but see if he can come close to duplicating what was the first team All Pro season. You look at Trotter. I felt like in a lot of places the way Trotter played this summer, and he lined up as a first team linebacker for much of the summer because of the Bond injury. It was him and Campbell. In a lot of places he would have won the job. I think here he's going to end up not winning the job because Jahad Campbell impressed Vic Fangio so much. And then you got Smile Mondin. Like you said, I mean, Kobe Dean came close to having an All-Pro season last year, and when he comes back, where do you put him? I don't know if Vic has some plans where he can play two of these linebackers, and I'm sure he does, and get Jahad Campbell on the field at the same time. But he's got a problem. It's a problem every defensive coordinator in the NFL would love to have. It's a good problem. He's got so many guys at this position, and it's going to be fascinating to see how things shake out this year at linebacker.
Yeah, and it will be interesting. You wonder if when Nakobe Dean comes back, will they transition Jahad Campbell into like more of a hybrid role? We'll see. But either way, you have to feel really good about what they can do, and the athleticism that they have with Zach Bond and Jahad Campbell allows them to do so many different things.
One of the underrated things about this team winning the Super Bowl last year was they lost to Kobe Dean in the first round of those playoffs, and Oren Burks ended up, playing at the same high level than the Kobe Dean was. So we could see from last year how important that was, and now they're situated just as well this
Yeah,
year.
and a lot of that credit you got to give it to Vic. I mean, a former linebackers coach, he does a good job of developing these players. They've all ascended under him. Bond, Dean, I mean, Campbell looks like the part already. I mean, obviously, he was a good prospect, but Vic does a really good job with linebackers. It's a strong part of this defense, and as long as he's the coordinator in Philadelphia, um, you have to feel good about where this group is going to be and his ability to develop young guys and get different guys playing well. Uh, Another reason they were so good last year, and we've talked about it um, throughout the summer, is the secondary, and they have to replace Darius Slay and they have to replace CJ Gardner Johnson. I just want to group the secondary in general because other than edge rush depth, I mean, edge rush really is just depth. Corners and safety, it's starting concerns. Who's your CB2 and who's your starting free safety in replace of CJ Gardner Johnson? I think there's some worry there. They went 6 corners. Keely Ringo, who had a rough summer, really got demoted at the end of training camp, was running with the third team. He still makes it on. And then you got Mac McWilliams and Jacorian Bennett. Those two really seem like the guys that are vying with Adoree Jackson, not Keely Ringo anymore. Maybe it's a little early to write off Keely, but it just hasn't been good. He got hurt at the end of training camp, missed the final preseason game, and was running with the third team defense. So I don't know if he's in the mix anymore, but like you got a cornerback 2 situation, maybe of Mac McWilliams, Jacorian Bennett, and Adoree Jackson. Then safety, I don't think is as much of a concern because I think Drew Makuba showed some potential in that game against the Browns. He got a hamstring injury at the end of training camp, so that's a concern. Like he's missed a lot of time. Will Vic trust him to play right away? And then Sidney, uh, I think does some things well, but he's a little up and down. But I'm not as concerned with the safety room. And overall, the Eagles kept 4 safeties, with Tristan McCullum being the 4th in that room. What's your worry level with the secondary right now? And what did you think of how they went about keeping 6 corners and 4 safeties? Do you like where they're at, or are you concerned? I mean, I'm worried. I guess maybe I'm just trying to see. Do you think this is going to be some big problems coming up here?
I think it's a concern for them. Yes, nobody really stood out, and one of the things that happened last year is the Eagles. Vic made this point in the spring during spring workouts that, hey, I look at this defense at, at that point it's the same way I looked at the defense the year before, where we had this question mark and that question mark and this question mark and that question mark. Yeah, they did, and almost oddly, the two places that did not have good answers were the two guys they spent the most money on in free agency: Bryce Huff and linebacker.
Devin White.
Help my
Devin White.
memory here.
Is it
What's
Devin
that?
White?
Devin White. Thank you, Devin White. Yeah, the two guys that they spent the most money on were the two guys that didn't produce, but everywhere else, the answer was yes. Oh, yes, he's the right answer. Zach Bone's the right answer there. Quinyon Mitchell's the right answer. Cooper DeJean's the right answer. Yes, N'Kobe Dean can play. The answers were yes, yes, yes. To rely on that, that the answer is yes, yes. It looks like Adoree Jackson's going to get the first crack with Jacori and Bennett and waiting, and perhaps Mac McWilliams, whatever. But they need him to be able to produce. I have more confidence in Sidney Brown, I think, than a lot of people. I still think he's a good player, an aggressive player. I like him, and I think Tristan McCollum's might be a little more underrated than people think too. So I don't. My bigger concern is at that second corner spot, and I think that says in my mind a lot more about, not a lot more, but it says something about Darius Slay for 5 years. Uh, I don't know if he's underrated, but maybe a little bit underappreciated of how good he was at that position. And they're not as good there going into this season as they were. And I don't think they're, no matter who they put out there, they're going to be as good because he was such a good cover guy. So and had and a good team guy. So I think they're going to miss him. I will they miss C.J. Gardner Johnson? probably in some ways, but perhaps in some ways not because of his volatility. Um, so I think Sidney fills that role better than maybe Adoree or any of those other cornerbacks fill the role that Slay had. And the combination of Sidney and Makuba, I just and even Tristan McCollum, I like those three guys having a chance to become good players.
Yeah, and um, I think there's a chance either Makuba or Sidney Brown become a good player. I don't know if I feel the same way about whoever's going to play at corner, and we'll see how things shake out. But Vic's got a little more work to do this year, a little more. He might have to scheme up to try to work around some of these issues. The last thing on the roster is the special teams. The Eagles kept, their punter and their kicker, but they didn't keep a long snapper. Charlie Hewlett didn't make the roster, but I think he'll probably be back on the practice squad, is my guess. It was, to save a roster spot. That's the one thing that I could think of as why, they did that. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on the long snapper move, but if you do, feel free to chime in.
I was a long snapper in high school. So it's they haven't called me yet though, and they might have the film of me trying to do it. I wasn't very good. I kind of I was my long snapping abilities were similar to my hitting abilities in baseball. There were a lot of three hoppers to the shortstop. So
Yeah, how many botch snaps can you estimate? Can you?
in my
Yes.
career, enough that at a certain point they said you can still be the center, but you can't be the long snapper anymore. So
Well, it takes some skill, and everyone jokes about long snap.
it takes a lot of
Yes.
skill. It takes a lot more than
Yeah.
people think.
All right. They got to make a practice squad tomorrow. There'll be some waiver wire activity, possibly, maybe some trades. I guess before we wrap up, and this will be the final part of today's podcast. What should people expect tomorrow?
What should they expect in
Just
terms
like
of?
how the day will go. Do you expect them to be busy on the waiver wire? Do you?
I don't think it's going to be
Yeah.
crazy. No, I don't. I don't think we're going to see a big move here. I really don't. But we'll see. We have seen the guys who have sat as free agents. Some of them have started to sign here. I would love to sign Darius Smith because I think he's got something left in the tank based on what he did last year. But somebody of that ilk. But I don't know if we're going to. It seems to me like they like the roster, although like I said, Howie stressed that he wasn't done yet. So nothing that Howie would do surprises me. So
No, and maybe he'll make a move. I feel like they should make a move at edge rusher, but who can you get at this point is the question. But let's see what happens. They'll make a practice squad tomorrow, at least. We'll see some of the guys that they bring back. That'll be a little bit interesting. But make sure to follow along for our coverage as we get closer to week one. We're a little over a week away from week one. We'll have more written content. We'll have another podcast probably next week leading into the game. And we always appreciate you guys listening. So make sure you're checking out the written content. Make sure you're coming back for more podcasts. We really appreciate you guys. And we'll catch you next time.